Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I want to know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Wellness Wednesday. Wellness Wednesday is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to talk about whatever it is we want to talk about. And today we are talking about Black athletes and mental health. Black athletes and mental health. So my very special guest is Dr. Kino Miller, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him in just a moment. He is actually a sports psychologist who has a lot to share on this very important topic. But before I bring him on, I want to hear from you. So where are you tuning in from? We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on the Greater Works Network on RokuTV. So if you will, in the comments, put your city and state in so we can give you a shout out. This is an interactive live, and we fully expect to interact with you. So bring your questions, bring your comments, tag a friend, like, share, and let them know they need to be on here with us tonight. We have been talking about Black and Brown mental health since the middle of November of last year. And tonight is no different. We have clinicians on Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern to talk around various topics. So tonight's topic again is Black athletes and mental health. Black athletes and mental health. So let me first give my godmom, Corliss, a shout out. She is tuning in from Miami. Thank you for being on here. So I know we see you all. Miss Marjorie, greetings from Orlando. Thank you for being on here, Marjorie. Should be a great conversation. So the athletes in your lives, let them know they need to be on here. Coaches, trainers, anybody that's interested in sports, especially Black folks playing sports, they need to be on here because we got a lot to talk about as it relates to this topic. So we know that there have been athletes that have been Olympians and, athletes across many sports that have kind of sat out, chosen not to compete because of their mental health. So this has been a hot topic for a little while now. And so I'm so glad that we are going to dive in. So let me go ahead and read you a little bit of Dr. Keino Miller's bio. Dr. Keino Miller earned his doctorate in counseling psychology from Indiana University, Bloomington, with a specialization in sports and performance psychology. He is licensed to practice in both Louisiana and Florida. He also attended the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, go Rattlers. He acquired over 10 years of experience serving athletes, high-achieving individuals, and families to address a variety of concerns, including depression and anxiety, motivation, trauma, relationship issues, identity development, career changes, and performance issues. He is proficient in the administration of comprehensive clinical assessments, treatment planning, and culturally responsive mental health services. His counseling approach is holistic as he applies cognitive, behavioral, person-centered, and culturally relevant practices, which is very important. Dr. Miller believes in working collaboratively with clients to meet their unique and specific needs. and his background includes a sport psychology fellowship at NC State University and internships with the psychological resource offices of OU student athletes at the University of Oklahoma. So y'all, help me welcome Dr. Kino Miller. Yay!
Having me.
Welcome, welcome.
I'm glad to be here. It's been a busy day, busy time right now, but I'm glad that we find this opportunity here to kind of get together and have a great conversation this evening, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Dr. Miller,
Mm.
tell the peoples who is Dr. Kino Miller? Not what you do, but who are you?
Uh, whew, that's a lot. I would probably preface everything by saying, I'm a black man in America. Trying.
Mhm.
I think the reality is, I chose to become a psychologist because I wanted to help people who look like me from neighborhoods like me perform at a higher level, not only in sport but also in life. And I
Mhm.
that continues to resonate with me, and I'm really excited about the work that I do. But it's even more impactful when I see young folks and even some of the retirees and some of the professionals that I work with talk about how the time we spend impacts other areas of their lives, family, um, professional, yes, but also, just kind of how they grow and develop. So for me, I am a psychologist, mental health professional, but I'm a father.
Mhm.
I am Rattler by claim. Um, I'm a Hoosier, whatever thing. But I'm just me. I'm a black man in America who feels empowered by my ancestors, and I'm really thoughtful about making sure that my spirit is aligned with the sacrifices that they gave.
Nice, nice. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. So, what prompted you to get involved in sports psychology?
Uh, well, two pieces actually. I was working with young men in the community. One of my frat brothers and I, we started working with young men right around the age of fifth grade, and
Mhm.
so working with them in the realm of sport. And I was still working out, so I'm a former football player myself. So I, hey, give me a call, I can come work out. And I was teaching and training and doing all of these things, trying to help them understand the game and the
Mhm.
aspects of the game. But as these young men went from fifth grade to sixth grade to seventh grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, they began to ask questions and have whole conversations we would about things outside of sport, girls, drugs, gangs, college. At that point in time, I said, "Ooh, I probably need to go back to school and get a little bit more training, um, because I want to be able to work with these individuals. Remember, communities like where I'm from, but I also want to be a professional." And so, one of my professors at the time gave me great encouragement because I had gone to school. I was trying to finish my MBA. I was looking for an MBA program.
Mhm.
I had a professor say, you should consider psychology, and I'm like, no, ma'am. 5 more years, I'm not going to do that. I'm looking for a 2 year MBA program. Uh, but after about a month, I came home and I said, what would it be like to really take this on and take this seriously? And for me, I'm a fan of Dr. Harry Edwards, and what he was able to galvanize in 1968 Olympics. I just said, if I'm going to be a psychologist, if I'm going to pursue this education, I want to do that. I want to have that level of impact on student athletes. And so, the journey began. Finished my master's at University of Texas at Austin, got a chance to start working with athletes there.
Mhm.
Took it on the road up to Indiana, continued my training with Dr. Jesse Steinfeld, and continue to grow and challenge myself as well as um, looking for opportunities to make the greatest impact in the field. So it really was individuals like Dr. Harry Edwards, um, Dr. Thomas Parham, Dr. Bill Parham, Dr. Kevin Coakley, who paved the way in addition to Dr. Jesse Steinfeld, really allowing me to understand how I could fit and how I could be of service to these athletes.
Nice, nice. So, youth inspired, right? In
Oh, yeah.
terms of, the journey.
Yes,
Wonderful.
indeed. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Well, before we jump in, I have to read my disclaimer, which is that all topics, past, present, and future, on Conversations with Nicole are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or an answer to any personal issue related to the topics being discussed before, during, or after the program. All right. So we still want to encourage folks to get with a counselor, get with a therapist, and get your checkup from the neck up. All right. So let me give a shout out to the chief who is on here, Terrell. That's okay. You're a little late, but you're here. All right. So let's dive in. So let's talk about it. I mean, Black athletes, from a historical standpoint, Black athletes are thought to um, you know, have great performance ability, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Almost like superpowers, almost, right?
Some would think so in a roundabout way.
Mhm.
The athletic paradigm for us as descendants of enslaved Africans began as a way of emancipation um,
Mm,
from the continent. That because everything began on the continent.
mhm,
Sport was used as a way to train for war, but also a way of celebrating life and celebrating one's humanity through physical prowess. And if we think about, what's depicted as the Olympics, the origins of the Olympics, we see people celebrating humanity as well as physical form. And so, if you think about it in context of coming, you know, from through the Middle Passage to the United States, or what would become the United States, that tradition was still there,
okay.
right? And so
Mhm,
when we got here, you're now in a state or a place where you can no longer celebrate your cultural identity.
mm,
And if you imagine that amongst all of the things that were um, taken from those people, how they expressed themselves through sport or through physical activity was compromised.
mm,
And so initially in that space, and my work really looks at the historical lens of how we've come to position ourselves as um, proficient in athletics. And part of it began because that was one way of self-expression. It began, if we can argue, in a lot of ways, on plantations.
mhm,
That was part of the entertainment for those who would presume themselves to be masters.
right.
And so while you're entertaining, you're starting to learn that if I'm successful in this feat, I get a big piece of chicken, I get some extra,
Mhm.
and I might have a lady to warm up to, if I can use that phraseology.
You
But
can.
I also may be asked to stud. And
Mm,
so the favor in being an athlete, that's where it began on the plantation. And if you fast forward to the 20th century, the athletes were the initial first superstars before entertainers. You know, Paul Robeson was an athlete before he was a singer. And so
interesting.
athletics has always provided a platform for us to emancipate our spirit and call back to what was before cultural expression. So today we do have athletic performers who continue to adhere to the traditions, but also those who um, have been socialized in the sport because it is seen as a legitimate way out of some impoverished situations. So because of that, because of the prowess, because of the early training, the early specialization, you do have people who are performing at a very high level. And it seems like it's God's talent and gifted, but it's some extremes. There are some talented individuals who wake up in the morning, they can run a 4-4,
Mhm.
but it's a lot of training, it's a lot of specialization, and hours of focusing on being the very best. at one thing or another.
Whew, so my wheels are really turning. So y'all, this is interactive. So I definitely want you all to jump in with comments and questions. But my thoughts are around, you know, I hadn't thought of it first of all from the historical context of this favoritism or favor, if you will, given to the athlete from a historical standpoint as enslaved Africans. But I can definitely, see that, and I have witnessed some of that, I guess, in some of the films that I've seen and that sort of thing. And so now I can just hearing you talk about that can see how we get what we get today, right? With the socialization of athletes to be these high performers and they have this favor or whatever because of their athleticism and that sort of thing. But I also think about how some of our ability has been looked at again kind of supernaturally, right?
Mhm.
That we have this almost beastly um
Mhm.
quality
Mhm.
about our physical athleticism, such that it's almost like it's superhuman and like we are almost animals, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
And that there maybe is a lack of emotion or feeling around it, that we can take anything, you know, that we possess this, we're so strong, like again, like beastly strong.
Of course, of course. I can't remember the name of the book, but I remember Darwin's Athlete. Darwin's, I think that's the name of the book, but
Mhm.
Bill Hoberman or something along those lines. And he gave a supposition that, because of uh, quote unquote breeding,
Mhm.
um, you, we are able to perform at higher levels. As Darwin, he was teasing out a point that through evolution,
Okay.
and man's intervention, we are predisposed toward athletic feats. But to that point, when you have the spectators and commentators who use languages such as beast mode and a dog, or he just went. What did they say? He just went ballistic, and some of the words that they use. And I remember Jimmy the Greek was a commentator um,
Mhm.
years ago, and how he spoke about the black athlete. Um, it's in our lexicon of really looking at athletes just as we look at horses or dogs, um,
Mm.
disposable to some extent. I remember in the film Django Unchained, it
Mhm.
um, wrestling to an extreme degree. But when I looked up the research, and part of that was just as I was beginning my studies, um, it modeled Mandingo wrestling, or
Mm.
really thinking about that. And I said, wow, is there really such a thing? And I was really excited because I'm like, okay, we could talk about the socialization of this part in our history. But, if we fast forward, that level of, I can get another competitor has continued on. Oh, his arm is broke or he's injured. Don't worry about it. We can get someone else out here. And so you see that
Mhm.
commoditization right now in our professional sport. It's one of the reasons why I entered a fantasy football league for some friends of mine, but I'm going to decline the invitation for this year because that level of commoditization, I don't feel like I can actively participate in any longer.
Okay.
Like, okay, well, oh, he broke his leg, oh, he can't come back. Okay, I'm just gonna get a new running back. No, these are
Mhm.
people's lives. These are people's lives,
Mhm.
their physical body. This is how many of them feed their family, and many of them have been training for years and years. I think they deserve a little bit more respect. But it is extremely germane in our culture to think about athletes as disposable. And so recently now, obviously, as you mentioned in the beginning of the program, we do have athletes who are now continuing to speak out and talk about, you know, my position. I'm more than an athlete is now movement.
Mhm. I'm
Or-
more than an athlete.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're tap into that and really think about who are the individuals behind the helmet or, off the court. And I really appreciate some of the platforms that are out here now. Pivot. I really enjoy that particular podcast because
Mm-hmm.
deep dive into understanding who is this individual who I cheer for as a person, as a man, or as a woman. I think that's essential.
Absolutely. All right. So we got a few comments in the chat. Ozzy said they treat horses better. All right. We got Torio on here, who actually is the inspiration for this live tonight, because he was the one who specifically asked that we have a sports psychologist on. So thank you for being on, Tio. He says, since society still sees athletes as entertainment only, what strategies are top 5 approaches to guide middle and high schoolers, I guess, en route to college,
Yeah,
in a way to maintain sense of self? He has 2 boys, um,
yeah.
and they are competitive athletically.
I
So,
can. Yeah, I have a high school junior who's competing in this first varsity season, and I have a freshman in high school who's a dancer.
mhm,
And so I've watched them develop and mature, particularly with my son, the junior in football. We've talked about the recruitment process. And so for those who have young athletes, I think it's essential in being able to understand holistic development. And so what that simply means is mind, body, spirit. And so what I mean, even to kind of peel that back a little bit, just as you are training your body, there's a cognitive aspect of the game.
mhm,
Really thinking about and very spatially how you diagram a play, how you synthesize a play, how you break down a play. And I think in using that, even on a whiteboard, there's a level of academic achievement, academic attainment that you can continue to promote in other areas outside of sport. Think about those who become coaches. It's not just the physical aspect of sport, it's the intellectual, it's the emotional. So I would ask a parent to consider, what are you training your child to do in addition to perform at that
mhm,
sport. One of the things my son began to do is think about um, players and think about, one of the interesting things about the game Madden, I'll use that as an example. He really began to think about, okay, these particular players, they play well together. So he started to become like a GM. And so what I've asked him to consider is, is not just being a GM, not just thinking about, player development or who's going to fill your roster. I really want you thinking about human resources. I really
mhm,
want you about putting together and maximizing the performance of the individuals who you can recruit, and think about it abstractly. So what I'm saying is, for parents of, emerging high school and middle school athletes, take it out of context of sport. And so it could be an assignment that you give them to think about great um, historical figures in sport. It could be something that you're doing in terms of just performance. But I want you to think more broadly than, here is what I do and here's what I am. And so some of my work involves working against identity foreclosure, where you see
mhm.
yourself in a singular domain. And I've asked student athletes to think of yourself beyond just that part. So for those who are really thinking, I'm going to make it, I got to be, 100% locked in order to get to the next level, be that college or be that professional. I would ask them, okay, well, how much energy are you putting into developing the other areas of life? Because as I said, we're socializing the sports. That means I can also be socialized into other things.
Mhm.
All right. So interesting enough, I was telling my son this weekend after their first game, I said, hey, you're going to do some yoga this summer. And he said, whatever it takes. I want him, again, I said mind, body, spirit. And
Mhm.
they think how to introduce more holistic practices with him.
Okay. Um,
Parents, that's a piece right there.
all right. So Torio, I hope that helped give some guidance on that. He has a second question, but I'm gonna get Marjorie's first. So Marjorie said, just my opinion and experience, I was with one 4.2 speed popular and couldn't be more lost as an individual. They thrive in environments praising them for their performance on the field, but struggle in their normal daily lives, can be hyper aggressive and don't know how to shut it off. They seem to have difficulties assimilating into normal life roles after sports is done. This is not all, but some I've known personally.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And the challenge is, for high performing athletes and even high performing individuals, um, when you work so hard at achieving something for about 10 years, it's really hard to shut it off. Um,
Mm-hmm.
one of my experiences, I've worked in a medical school, and part of my training was in, working with first and second year medical school students. Um, it's really fascinating when you think about some of these individuals have wanted to be a doctor since they were 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know how interesting it is and similar it is to athletes or former athletes when they can't get into medical school,
Mm-hmm.
do well in medical school, or they fail out of medical school?
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine yourself doing something for 10 to 15 years and that comes to an end, can be very difficult.
Yeah.
And so we have to be intentional with those in educational spaces, those in terms of family dynamics, of really asking our young athletes to develop the other aspects of you. And so, what's your favorite class? So when I'm talking to young athletes, I'm asking them also about what's your favorite class. How do you see yourself, choosing a career? I never talk about sport, not in those sessions. I want them to think more holistically in terms of how they view themselves. And I want them to have a career exploration moment. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, after you retire, what will you do? And so what I'm asking them to do is start that process of chipping away at that foreclosure. Because what we do know in sport, we all retire. So the earlier young athletes start thinking about what comes after sport, they can start developing those skills alongside their athletic career.
Indeed. So Danielle Harley is on, giving you a shout out. She said you were her supervisor at Wakulla CI.
Hey.
All right. So we do have a second comment from Torio. He said, in light of George Floyd's death and post Black Lives Matter, how would you address the issue for you?
Yeah. You know, what we do know, and I'm going all the way back to Trayvon. And I
Okay.
remember, you know, coming back to after coming off of spring break, if I'm not mistaken, and people were talking about, wearing hoodies.
Mm-hmm.
Wear a hoodie today. And I'm like, okay, that's new. Um, but when I heard about what happened to Trayvon, I said to myself, another one? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to this. I don't have a perspective that I'm going back to 2008. I do remember the words post-racial and the spirit and the attention the nation gathered around the world or garnered around the world after electing President Obama.
Mm-hmm.
It felt good for a few moments and for a few days, even up to inauguration in January. And then shortly after that, we began to see that many of the same challenges we've had for over generations are still there.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to do some work. And so, what I've asked individuals to do, because I'm a black psychologist, and I used to say I'm a black psychologist masquerading as a sports psychologist, but my training is in um, black and African psychology. That's FAMU, sports psychology, and liberation psychology. And what I do understand in this particular day and time, in this particular space, is the fight is never over.
Mm-hmm.
So for the movement, it now includes the legacies of uh, George Floyd, which encapsulates student athletes because the voice was finally let loose and free.
Mm-hmm.
For so many times, athletes didn't want to talk about things that were controversial. But what you had in that movement were so many athletes finally using their voice collectively and individually. when we think about Colin Kaepernick and his efforts, one
Yeah.
thing Colin is don't do it alone. They will find a way to banish you. Do it collectively. When I think about I think it was called the Cincinnati Summit, no, the Cleveland Summit. This was right after Muhammad Ali had said, "I'm not going to Vietnam." And there's a photo, very famous photo of him with Bill Russell and many of those greats during that era. Lou Alcindor at the time, who would become Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kurt Flood is in that image as well. It's collective. So whatever it takes to bring us back to a level of collectivity where we can share our thoughts and ideas and we can empower ourselves, that's what this moment means to me. We shouldn't have to die though to have that level of thoughtfulness of taking.
Mm.
But we're in an era where sometimes we kind of get selfish in our ways.
Mm.
So it shouldn't be a death that brings us together. We should already be thinking about how do sports bring us together and how do we honor each other's sacrifice. That's that's my perspective there.
Indeed. So, for those of you who are just joining us, I have Dr. Kino Miller, sports psychologist, Black sports psychologist, who is licensed in Florida and in Louisiana. And we are talking Black athletes and mental health. Black athletes and mental health. So, we talked historical and brought it modern day. We've had some really good questions. This is an interactive live, so we do expect to hear from you for those of you who are new to the platform. So yeah, let's continue to flesh this out. So you talked about the post Rachel. We have Antonio Jones said they only gave us Obama to turn our heads to all the stuff around the world they don't want us to see or speak about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't I couldn't agree more. I think sometimes politics is warfare. And
Mm-hmm.
if you ever think of they're finally listening to me, I want everyone to really think about what else, what isn't being said, or what else may be moving in the same light. And we just have to be more thoughtful and strategic in terms of not only how we support people, but we have to do our work. And President Obama did tell us that we have to come together. He said it from the day one. He's not a savior. He wasn't a savior. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes sometimes folks from communities like mine, we begin to kind of put it all on one leader. And what we understand, so many leaders we lost over the years, can't just be one person. We have a collective responsibility.
Yes,
Um,
we do.
can use that as inspiration, but at the same time, we have to pick up not only the ballot, we have to pick up the books. We have to pick up one another. And then sports as a platform is training for your mind as well as your body and your spirit. So these are the parts that we're trying to celebrate, but also learn from.
So we have uh, a commissioner, a local commissioner here, who is also a former NFL player, Nick Maddox, on, and he wants to know, how does sports bring us together, and how do we honor each other's sacrifice?
Great question.
That
That's
is a
great.
great question.
The thing about sport, and I'm from Texas, right? And Friday nights, if you think about Friday nights, if you're in a, let's just say an impoverished situation, or you're in a situation where there's some different choices. I'll put it like that. Sport brings the community together, and for at least a couple of hours, there's some peace. We see that. That's what's stated in the Olympics, right?
Mm-hmm.
For 1 week, the world comes together, and so with the expectation, I'm using very big scale here. The expectation is people put down arms so they can celebrate by sport, by using sport or through sport. Same thing as our community. This is when we get to continue to celebrate our culture. We get to tailgate. This is the same thing. What do you have with homecoming?
Mm-hmm.
Football game. But now
Mm-hmm.
alumni coming back to many of these campuses. We cook, we eat, we fellowship. Many people come back that you haven't seen in 10, 15 years. They
Mhm.
feel a part of the community. Oh, by the way, they drop off a check, right? Because
Mhm.
FAMU needs your love as well as Jackson State and Bethune-Cookman.
Yep.
Uh, but that builds responsibility, right? And so the reality of the matter is that builds a collective identity, and that is the glue. A stadium is no different than a church. People identities are tied into not only their sport team as it is their faith. Believe that. That's why football is Sunday.
Mhm.
But this is the part where the more we come together and we identify with something that brings us together, and it could be that shared, going all the way back to the beginning, that shared cultural identity that we celebrate through performance. Let me go backwards also, just really quickly. I also work with female athletes, so I don't want to get misconstrued that I'm only working with just black men, even though that's my area of focus. I've worked with athletes who perform as gymnasts, who perform as dancers. And so
Mhm.
when we think about the next page is through cultural performances, dancers, when they come together and they form a healing circle and the drummers start, that's all performance.
Mm.
All of that is healing. All of that is healing. When you come to a game and they sing the Negro national anthem, that's healing.
Mhm.
Take a moment and listen to the words. We celebrate who we are collectively or during and after.
The competitions. Okay. Dr. Asha said, do
But
our revered athletes have
mhm,
the mental capacity to be role models and or mouthpieces for the generation?
yeah, I think so. I think, for those who choose to give back, for those who choose to inspire young athletes, there is a way to where young people can push their minds. Well, I'm saying push their bodies, but you're also going to push your mind. So we talk about mental toughness a lot. And the goal is to remove the barriers in your mind where you can achieve optimal performance. And so what I'm asking is how do we introduce this in a way that's healthy and how do we introduce this in a way that is culturally responsive, right? And so for me, the reality is sport can help young people develop many cognitive tools and be able to perform at a very high level, both intellectually inside the classroom as well as academically beyond just that moment in time. When you teach a person how to focus, let me use a cognitive tool here. When you teach a person how to focus at a point on the screen and breathe, and every time they have a distraction, breathe and bring it back to center, breathe and bring it back to center. You're teaching them the importance of breath work and having a cognitive reset. That is essential to performance, both on and off the field.
Okay. Very well said. All right. So Nick has a follow-up question. He says, how do we take the same sense of togetherness that crosses all racial and socioeconomic boundaries in the stadiums and arenas and display it outside of sports and inside our communities?
Yeah, really great question.
Mm,
So the community had, in my opinion, let me preface this.
that's
The
fine.
community has agents and people who are invested in, let's say, being able to elevate the community. So this is where maybe a fundraiser would take place to not only build a stadium, but also to fix the streets around the stadium or up the street from the stadium. I'm going to use FAMU as an example just because we're here in Tallahassee. A Capitol building campaign might start with Bragg Stadium, but it extends to across the street to now the pharmacy school or the College of Education. And so those agents, those individuals who are tasked with development of the campus center can help people understand that sport, yes, it's exciting, but the institution can also benefit overall. If we now take that into the community, right? For those who are maybe your son or daughter, they're participating in sports. This is why, we have a lot of fundraisers that occur when the sport, when the fall season starts, fundraisers start. And so think about how a fundraiser is geared. It could be geared toward improvement of the school. It could be geared toward improvement of the community around the school. It could be geared toward funding additional security now. Things that a school cannot afford, teachers who have to go in their pockets to have expenses paid for their students. A fundraiser can be part of that gathering in sport. And so sport can now facilitate learning.
All
I
right.
I think those are those are essential, right? Hand in hand. The community takes care of itself by using sport. It's a conduit. Again, it's a conduit for not only the individuals who perform, but also the communities. So it is those who are creating those spaces, promoting those events, these classics,
Mm-hmm.
fund scholarships.
Yeah, they do.
So that's how that connection is made.
They absolutely do. All right. So Marjorie said that it is also concerning how we are seeing Black athletes dying so young and at a high rate. We are seeing less of the longevity in careers, and society is promoting fast money and lifestyles. The mentors need to be more valued and brought in early on in their careers.
Yeah, Marjorie. I mean, it's absolute. Thinking about it from this perspective here, from all of those who play, let's say, high school football,
Mm-hmm.
less than 2%, less than 1% are ever going to be professional.
Mm.
So it's about the same for basketball, and then as you go into other sports, that that number stays constant in terms of those who are being able to make it to professional levels. What that tells me is you're correct. Mentorship is essential. Coaches, being able to work with students and help students develop. I think it's really cool that some coaches are actually school teachers
Mm-hmm.
because now my students get a chance to see, hey, my coach has a job too. So there's something I should be thinking about, what I can do in addition to sport or outside of sport. But the youth coaches are essential because they now have the platform to work with 5, 10, 7, 8, 10 year, 12-year olds
Mm-hmm.
and understand that after the game is over, here's what else we do,
Yeah.
you know? And so I think that part right there, um, that needs, I would say I champion that. More mentors, yes. At an earlier age, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Torio had another question. After you've played your days, swam in the Olympics, made your last dunk, how have you unwound athletes with limited identity to become fulfilled mind, body, and soul, as you say?
Yeah. Great question, but what I'm asking is how do they reconnect with the community? Are
Mm,
they ostracized on an island of former athletes, or do they find themselves coming back and contributing? Do they find themselves coming back into the fold of their family and their friends? Do they come back to their alma maters and continue to engage? One of the interesting pieces I've seen working at, I think, 4 Division I institutions, you see a lot of retired athletes, or you see a lot of athletes who come back to college campuses during the spring and the summer, and they, more than working out, they take classes. I remember there was an NBA lockout, and I was a TA for a course years ago, and because the NBA lockout, I've got NBA players sitting in my class. I'm teaching Black American history or something like that. Um, and he's continuing to invest in his academic and intellectual pursuit.
mhm.
And so what I'm saying is, yes, after the last dunk, after the last touchdown, continuing to connect not only with family but also with your academic institution, and even being able to come back around, maybe your high school coaches. It's phenomenal the job that high school coaches do. They're mentors for young men who may go on to college, may not. They may continue to work and be a part of the community and serve the community in other ways. But that is essential, that they stay connected and stay grounded with those figures who have helped them really develop as athletes.
Great discussion. Really, really great discussion. So uh, Dr. Asha and Nick have kind of sidebar conversation going on, but I want to just kind of bring to light some of their conversations that athletes can do and achieve whatever you tell them to achieve. They will be what you define them as. Ask any coach, and he'll tell you they take raw talent and mold it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
And also, I mean, I think what I would even add to that is that allows, or that forces almost the coach to go beyond just X's and O's,
Mhm.
because they know they have that type of relationship, right? I know, I mean, the coach dynamic is, hey, eat this. It's going to help you perform better. Okay, no problem. You know, if you hydrate, this is going to help you better. You know, a while ago, we heard that pickle juice would help you with cramping. Guess what
Mhm.
happened? Everybody's on pickle juice. And so everybody's looking to perform at a very high level. So now coaches like Deion Sanders at Jackson State is using that platform and using that position to say, go to class,
Mm.
sit in the front of the classroom,
Yes.
slides, no wife beaters. So now that same level of influence is helping develop and shape the minds of these young men. There's a way about performance. There's a way
Mhm.
in the classroom, and one day you're going to enter the world and have a high level of professionalism because of it. So coaches have that influence, absolutely.
Absolutely. So that actually brings to mind a couple of coaches that I've had on. I've had Coach Q, who was the junior college TCC champion, women's basketball championship winner, and I've also had Coach Leonard Hamilton, who is the men's basketball coach over at FSU on. And uh, I know that it's gone beyond X's and O's for them, that they have served as father figures for
Mhm.
their student athletes. And they have a big role in the lives of their student athletes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And they it is, Nick was talking about them being molded,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. It's more than a job, you know, and that's
Yeah.
part, even as a sports psychologist, is more than a job. It's a way of helping people tap into something that you don't know. If they don't get it from you, where else are they going to get it? And so
Mhm.
that's the part of being authentic. That's the part about being holistic. So for these coaches who genuinely care about these student athletes or the individuals that they're recruiting, that's huge because they know the statistics. The coaches know the statistics of being able to play at a D1 level or go on and into the professional leagues, and therefore they've taken up the mantle of helping develop and shape, quality professionals, quality citizens who are going to contribute to the community. And so you do have coaches who have that extra um, added incentive of being able to try to carry that legacy and that mantle because their role is huge. I can't echo that anymore.
Yeah. I was just going to add too, Dr. Miller, that they also serve as surrogate fathers in the
Mhm.
lives of many of these athletes. And
Yeah.
so that is a huge responsibility.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's one of the things when I think about Allen Iverson, one of my favorite athletes of all time. You
Mhm.
know, Coach John Thompson talked about, the conversation he had with AI's mother. And, AI, had some challenges in high school, like we all do. But his mother was really intent on Coach Thompson being more than a coach for him.
Mhm.
Needed that guidance and he needed that mentorship, and he's talked about it, so it's nothing, not a trivial thing, the importance of these coaches to help shepherd these young men. Oftentimes is the difference between life and death and incarceration even.
And look, and women too, in some regards.
Absolutely, absolutely. Coach at South Carolina, she's doing a phenomenal job.
Mhm.
We've got some coaches out there at all levels, who are standing in the gap. You think about sometimes these students get out of practice late, and coaches are picking up meals,
Yeah.
coaches are taking the student athletes home, you know,
Hmm.
and I think they deserve a little bit more praise because sometimes it's just out of love.
Yeah, for sure. All right, couple of other comments that definitely are worth addressing. Michael Jones said athletes that look like us must know that they can be professional in other areas of their sport. We must be able to have clear vision to give revelation to them as the bigger picture. And Dr. Asha want to know, do the coaches subscribe to mental health therapy for themselves as well?
uh, yes, to that one. The thing about it is, you know, coaches and the culture. We'll just talk about, part of that. The mental health aspect and that mental health dynamic, is relatively new. And so
Hmm.
what you're finding is people are trying to figure out how to access the services, the value of the services. Um, they're making way and making space, not only for the dialogue, but also for the providers who are able to come in and really help these individuals.
Hmm.
So I've worked with coaches, professional NFL coaches. I've worked with, NBA coaches. Because I work with high school level, um, college level, professional, retirees, their
Hmm.
wives, their children, and family members. And so the reality of the matter is, yes, coaches are receiving services and they are the best advocate um, for mental health as something that is essential. You have coaches who are standing in the gap and they recognize the value of it. Then it's so easy. I want to say it's easier, but it seems as if there's a high level of connection.
Mm.
It not only the community, the providers, the teams. When the coach gets it, I think we all benefit. So this is the aspect of the new domain of taking care of yourself. We recognize what stress is. You don't have to be an athlete to be stressed, but
Right.
imagine putting on a uniform as part of something that you love. And you mentioned some of the athletes recently in the Olympics and
Hmm.
who had that platform taking a break back.
Yeah.
This is a new paradigm right now we're in, and I
Hmm.
think that we continue to support the coaches and the athletes as they're trying to figure out how to utilize these services.
Hmm. So Nick, circling back, he said,
Go for
important point here, parents, be careful who you let your child call coach.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah, a lot of parents, you're your first coach. You're the first coach for a lot
one
of parents.
coach. Yes.
But some parents, hey, drop them off, and they just trust coach. Coach get you right. And I think you should ask questions. It's interesting when we think about the trust that we put in coaches. Um, we've gotten in trouble with that. And I think as a community, those who are parents and performers, we just have to ask more questions about not only what a coach, um, what they'll learn as an athlete, but also um, how will they become better as individuals outside of sport. I think that's a valid question.
It is. It is. All right. We got Cap Fitness on. Says, yes, us coaches definitely need to invest more in our mental health. However, our focus is on making sure our players are good 111% of the time, and it's not provided by our coaches, aka bosses.
Yeah, and that's the part where what we've seen with NCAA sports is there are places and spaces where athletes have um, let their administrators know that, hey, we want to make sure mental health is available for us. And there's a mandate, in terms of the NCAA of having resources available. But student athletes are kind of coming together and really thinking about, not only the fact that we want a provider, we also want a provider who is culturally competent. And I
Mhm.
think about what athletes are really saying. Not only do they look like me, but they understand my worldview and my perspective. And
Mhm.
so athletes have a voice, as well as coaches, but the loudest voice in the room is going to be athletes. You know, we're in a week where FAMU football players spoke up and they said something. We shouldn't be in a fight with them. We should
Mhm.
be what they're saying about their positionality and the things that are impacting them. And we
Say
want
that
to make
again. Say that again.
no, I said we should be listening to them, about things that are impacting their ability to function and thrive, both on and off the field.
Okay.
Athletes that voice and they are learning to use it. And now for administrators and coaches, we have to take take into consideration the things that they're sacrificing to play at that level.
Mhm. Indeed. All
Sacrifice
right.
don't
I like.
sacrifice, advocate for the resources that are going to help you be better and improve both on and off the field.
Amen, as Torio just said. All right. We got Mr. Jones back on. He said, as a male college coach, some coaches have a hard time being vulnerable. However, it will take coaches that seek therapy to help other coaches because of the trust and receptive factor. EAP is key. EAP is employee assistance programs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's part of what we talked about earlier, and as prepared. There's the perception that there's a barrier around mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can be costly,
Mm-hmm.
but EAP has helped many access mental health services.
Yes.
And it's important to take advantage of those opportunities. But yes, coaches who invest themselves
Mm-hmm.
come to understand the value
Yes.
of mental health, not just on the performance side. A lot of people think the performance is the key because we all want to get better at doing something. I can work with any athlete and help them get better at something, but I hope
Mm-hmm.
help them get better at doing life and thriving and learning how
Right.
to manage their energy away from performance.
Indeed. Cap Fitness also talks about it not just being football,
Mhm.
all athletics. Understand that football may have the loudest voice amongst the sports on campus, but it's all athletics.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We saw that a few summers ago. Interestingly, we saw our women athletes becoming extremely uh, vocal, you know,
Mm-hmm.
into issues impacting Black people in America. And in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of places, a lot of campus centers, the male athletes were following.
Yeah.
So he has a great point, and she's accurate in that. And that's the
Indeed.
part about being able to support all of our athletes, no matter the gender, no matter their gendered identity, no matter what sport they're performing in. If they're spending hours and hours trying to perfect that craft, there is a need to continue to support them holistically.
Indeed. Indeed. All right. Well, this has been a great discussion. We actually could go on, but we are getting close to our time, so I want to be respectful of that. I will give you an opportunity to give us some closing remarks, Dr. Miller. And if you have anything coming up, let us know and how we can connect with you, how the viewers can connect with you.
Yeah, you know, I I'm I just want to say that for me, it's an area of passion. I really enjoy the opportunity to engage and work with athletes at all levels. Um, Dedicating yourself to sport is not an easy thing, but if you're gonna do it right. If you're going to say I want to be the very best, be true to that. Because the moment, and like I said, sport is a training ground for so many other things in life. So if you're going to utilize sport or you're going to put forth a goal, be 100% in that goal. And so for so many of our young people, our professionals, continue to utilize the services to learn to grow outside of sport. Just as we think about coaches, we have coaches, then we have performance coaches, and now we have mental health clinicians and providers roaming the halls of athletic departments. So we're starting to expand the lens of who is here to advocate, ally, and promote health and wellness. That's huge and that's critical, but it doesn't stop. So we've talked this evening about the families, the parents, the communities. It's more than just what's happening in the athletic department. And so I think we can utilize sport as a platform to not only promote the objectives and agendas of our teams, of our universities, of our communities, but we can also utilize sport as a model for healing beyond that point, that plane and platform. So me personally, I'm continuing to do the work that I do. I love being in private practice. Um, it's I would say a private passion, and I'm honored that people try to locate me, and we set up our meetings, and I'm honored to have access to some of the athletes that I've had the privilege to work with, and I look forward to just kind of continuing to serve in that space. My website is Dr. KinoMiller.com, and people can find information there. All of my contact information is there. Um, and so I'm really thankful for you, Nicole. I appreciate the invitation. Maybe you'll have me back and we can continue to discuss some things. But this has been great, and I hope that people have found that the time we spent tonight was helpful.
Absolutely. No, I have. It's been very insightful and interesting. I've enjoyed the dialogue. If you all have enjoyed it, let us know. Put it in the comments, a thumbs up, a clap, a heart, something. Let us know. Yeah, Dr. Asha, who is my birthday twin, she said a part 2. So I think that means she approves. Ozzy, who's also a clinician in Virginia Beach, he said an awesome discussion tonight. Much information to adhere to. So yes, yes, yes. All right. And Mr. Jones is giving us a thumbs up. Got Dustin saying very encouraging. Nick Maddox, awesome conversation. Enjoyed it. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Appreciate you all. Appreciate you all. And Torio, listen, he was the inspiration behind having you on tonight. So thank you, Torio, for being on here as well. Appreciate it. So if you have not subscribed to the Conversations with Nicole YouTube channel, I invite you to do so, subscribing and supporting. And listen, I gotta ask, I'm trying to get 4,000 viewing hours. I'm about halfway there. So I need y'all to go to YouTube and play these shows, okay? Because that's gonna help me out. We also are on RokuTV, Greater Works Network. Please add the channel to your channel options, and you can watch us live from your living room or wherever you are. We also have an app, a Greater Works Network app. All right. But I'm on every Monday and Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. live. Black and Brown Mental Health is the focus. And then season 11 just came out last Friday, which I pre-recorded, but you can see those also on YouTube and on Roku. So, and I got a podcast now, y'all. So listen, I'm doing all the things. So podcasts on all of the platforms where you can get your podcasts. Right there. So Mr. Jones said he's going to be reaching out to you, Dr. Miller.
Sure.
Rudy over in Cali said he approves this message. And my brother Torio says thank you. So,
Pleasure. But I appreciate you all so much.
Indeed, indeed. All right, good people. We are going to close this out. You all have a safe Labor Day weekend. And we'll see y'all live next week back here. Yes. All right. I love it. That solidarity fist. All right. Peace.